What's poppin', y'all? Welcome to arguably the spookiest episode I've ever done on this channel. It's episode 10 of my series on the 48 Laws of Power, where I connect one story from each chapter to a story in hip hop or the music business. And today, the story is about Lil Durk and why everyone, and I mean everyone, should try to stay as far away from him as possible. If you like analysis videos on hip hop and rap, then subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Law 10 is infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. You can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You may feel you are helping the drowning man, but you are only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it on you. Associate with the happy and fortunate instead. The story we're going over takes place in 19th century Europe, and the woman's name is Marie Gilbert. She was born in Ireland but went to Paris in the 1840s to make a career as a dancer and performer. She took the name Lola Montez and was claiming she was a flamenco dancer from Spain. Her career wasn't going too hot, and 5 years later, in order to put food on the table, she became a courtesan and one of the most successful ones in Paris. A courtesan is basically a prostitute, or an escort, or a whore. One that works with mainly wealthy dudes, though. There was one guy that could save her dancing career, and that was the owner of the newspaper that had the largest circulation in France, Alexandre Dujalier, and the drama critic of that same paper. She decided to do some research on him, or stalking, as we should call it, and she found out that he went riding every morning. She was a good horse rider, definitely a lot better than her dancing. So she was riding one morning and just happened to run into him, or so he thought. She quickly seduced him, and within a few weeks, she moved into his apartment. They were happy together for a little while, and with his help, her dead career was beginning to get some life. And even though he was a high-class individual, he told his friends that he was going to marry her in the spring. But his life was going to take a turn for the worst because of this love. He was invited to a party that was going to be attended by some of the richest young men in Paris. Lola wanted to go with him, but he refused to let her. They had a fight, and Dujalier ended up going alone and got really drunk. He insulted a very important drama critic by the name of Jean-Baptiste Rosemond du Beauvalon, likely due to his criticism of Lola's dancing. Jean-Baptiste challenged Dujalier to a duel the next morning, and unfortunately for Dujalier, he was one of the best shooters in all of France. He tried to apologize to Jean-Baptiste, but he wasn't having it, and during the duel, Dujalier got shot and killed. Lola decided to leave Paris. It wasn't long before she was on to her next man. She was in Munich and was after King Ludwig of Bavaria. So like most IG thoughts, she knew she had to get through the tour manager before she could get to the rapper. She went for his aide, Count Otto von Reckberg, who had a soft spot for pretty girls. He was having breakfast one day at a cafe when Lola rode by on her horse and accidentally got thrown off, landing at his feet. The Count rushed to the rescue and was enamored by her beauty. He promised he would introduce her to Ludwig. He arranged an audience for her with the king, but she could overhear the king saying he was too busy to hear someone he had never heard of, who clearly wanted something from him. Lola pushed aside the guards and walked into his room, and somehow her dress accidentally got ripped, and her bare chest was revealed. You don't have to be a genius to guess that he would like to listen to what she had to say after that. Less than 2 days later, she made her debut as a dancer on the Bavarian stage with terrible reviews, as per usual, but that wouldn't stop the king from having her booked for more shows. Ludwig himself said that he was bewitched by her. He began walking with her by his side in public. Think about it, a king with a prostitute. He bought an apartment for her in one of the most expensive places in Munich. He started buying her tons of gifts and writing poems for her, even though this was totally out of character for him. And with all this attention in the public, she would become rich and famous overnight. She definitely didn't know how to handle this though. In one incident, there was an old man in front of her riding his horse too slow, and she pulled out the whip you use for a horse and started hitting him with it. There was a different incident when she took her dog out for a walk off of his leash, and he attacked the person. This got the citizens of Bavaria very angry, but Ludwig went against his own people and sided with Lola, even granting her citizenship. Maybe you don't want to listen to the common folk, but even his close advisors were warning him to stay away from Lola. But he fired anyone who criticized her. He didn't stop there. He made her countess and built a new palace for her and let her advise him on policy, becoming the most powerful individual in Bavaria since she had him wrapped around her finger. She was promoting liberalism and all these policies that the Jesuits and conservatives of Bavaria, which was almost the entire population, found despicable. Ludwig easily had to be top 10 simps of all time. But riots began breaking out and threats of a looming civil war were brewing. Ludwig couldn't stand the pressure anymore and asked her to leave. But the people couldn't just go back to business as usual after what they witnessed from their supposed king. They forced him to leave his post. Lola was on to the next. This time home of the worst rap music in the world, England. This time her prey was a young army officer named George Trafford Held, who was the son of an influential barrister, which was a high-level lawyer of sorts. He was 10 years younger than her, and had his pick of the litter when it came to young and beautiful females. He could have had anyone he wanted, but this grandma ended up casting a spell on him. They were married in less than a year, but she had been arrested on the charge of bigamy, which is getting married twice, because before all of this started, even before she had gone to Paris originally, she was still legally married to someone she had eloped with years ago. She skipped bail, and they went to Spain. But during a bad argument, Lola slashed George with a knife, and he decided it was time to dip. When he came back to England, everything was gone for him. He lost his post in the army, and English society wanted nothing to do with his tainted name. He moved to Portugal and lived poor for only a few months before he died of drowning in a boating accident. Some years later, the man who published Lola's autobiography didn't die, but he went bankrupt. In 1853, she decided to head to America, California to be exact, where this granny was able to get herself a man by the name of Pat Hole, who she married. Eventually, she got fed up with him and left him for someone else. Pat became an alcoholic and depressed until he died 4 years later, still at a young age. But there was another individual who was a co-respondent in a divorce lawsuit against her, who was killed shortly afterwards. When Lola turned 41, she decided to give all her clothes and fancy items away and turn to God, going and speaking across America on different religious topics, dressed like she wasn't a prostitute who had left a trail of destruction wherever she went. She died 2 years later from tertiary effects of syphilis in Brooklyn, New York, and I think that's what we call irony. How could this possibly connect to Lil Durk is what you might be asking yourself, and it's a valid question. There was a video on YouTube a long time ago called The Lil Durk Curse, and it was made by HipWiki, so credit to him. But to sum it up, anyone who was close to Lil Durk ended up with the same fortune as anyone who was close to Lola Montez, and that was usually death. Let's go over all the incidents one by one today. In the What's Up music video, where Lil Durk is featured alongside Fredo Santana and Lil Reese, there are 3 people right next to Durk in the scene in an alleyway. The names are J Money, Newski, also known as OTF Nunu, and Pluto. J Money was killed only a couple of months later at the age of 21. OTF Nunu, who was really on the rise and made a couple of great songs, was killed less than a year later. And Pluto died in a car crash at the age of 24, the same year that video was shot and uploaded. In a scene from the song Guns and Money by Lil Durk featuring King Skrilla, both D-Rose and THF Bobo are in the video. D-Rose got sentenced to 40 years in prison for a murder of a 14-year-old, and Bobo was shot to death at age 23 as he was walking out of prison for beating a murder case on a technicality. Talk about bad luck. Or karma. In the music video for This Ain't What You Want, Bezu got arrested for murder in 2014 that was committed on July 4th of 2009, 5 years ago, on the Chirac All-Star Game, of course. In the music video for Big Ol' Nigga or BON, you can see OTF Chino, who was Lil Durk's manager, talking on the phone, and he ended up getting shot and killed sitting in his car. In a different video, you can see someone with a red Bulls cap by the name of 5 Star. He didn't die, but he did get 20 years for selling laced heroin in Iowa, of all places. In another music video, with Lil Reese and Fredo Santana titled Beef. You could see Fredo Santana as well as see him in many other music videos, and he died from a seizure in 2018. This is one of the individuals we could just say, or chalk it up, he didn't suffer a terrible fate because he could have died from getting shot or ended up in prison for decades. And he lived a long time after the whole Chirac drill scene took off. In the video for Hoes and Bottles by Lil Durk, you can see King Louie, who got shot in the head in 2015, about 2 years after the video, but he survived and is still alive right now. Maxwell Godow, who was a 17-year-old fan of Lil Durk, just took a picture with him, and only moments later, he was shot in the back and killed while in his car with a girl who also got shot, but I'm pretty sure she survived. In the video for Play for Keeps, you can see Rondo number 9 and L.A. Capone. L.A. Capone would get shot and killed in 2013 after leaving a studio session, and Rondo number 9 would get 39 years in prison for murder. There's a music video for the song Gon' Lie by Chinks that Lil Durk was featured in, and only 6 months later, Chinks was shot and killed in his own neighborhood. The most recent victim was Lil Durk himself. He turned himself in on May 30th in Georgia for charges of criminal attempt to commit murder, aggravated assault, shooting at, unlawful for person employed by associated with criminal street gang to conduct or participate in criminal gang activity, possession of a firearm during commission of a felony, and possession of firearm by convicted felon, and he was released on $250,000 bond. They're saying that they have camera footage of him and this other dude, I think his name's Vaughn, doing the crime. But I hope that isn't so for Lil Durk. This is creepy, and it might seem like it's messed up to avoid certain people that bring bad luck with them, but it's the truth. There are certain people in this world that always have something bad happening to them, or anyone around them. It might seem like it's not even their fault, but they're a cloud of darkness, and there is no point in trying to save or rescue them. The best option is to stay as far away as possible. Like I said, sometimes it's seemingly out of their control, like in the case of Lil Durk, but others do it to themselves. Certain individuals that are pessimistic always have a negative view towards the world, and it's why nothing good happens to them, because they're never grateful for all the good that they have in life. The reversal to this law is as follows. This law admits of no reversal. Its application is universal. There is nothing to be gained by associating with those who infect you with their misery. There is only power and good fortune to be obtained by associating with the fortunate. Ignore this law at your peril. I couldn't have said it better myself. If you guys enjoyed this episode, on the top right, there'll be a playlist for the rest of this series, which I suggest you check out. Put a lot of work into it, and you guys seem to be liking it. I'll see you there.